ready for some Shakespeare. Let's do
Hey,
it.
everybody. Welcome to Sketching Shakespeare, where we sketch Shakespeare. And by we, I mean Swan. I'm Steph Corniola. I do a Shakespeare podcast. It's called Protest Too Much. I yell about Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Swan is
I'm
the sketching.
I'm the sketching. Hooray.
You can find her at Doodle Crew Draw or at a Swan named Emily all across the internet.
Look at us
Today, we're going to make some horse girls mad.
go. Oh boy.
So, hey,
ready.
hey, horse girls. I love you. And I just want you to know that now. This is going to be a scene from Macbeth. And we are in, we are in Act 2, Scene 4. So Duncan has already been murdered. The king has been murdered. And Macbeth has been chosen as the next king. He's off to be crowned is the word I was looking for. He's off to be crowned. Yeah, sworn in. And this is a scene between an old man and Ross. And Ross is just kind of one of the dudes who just hangs out in Scotland. Okay, so we've had a rough night in Scotland. This old man says, 70 I can remember well, within the volume of which time I have seen hours dreadful and things strange. But this sore night hath trifled former knowings. Like, I've had some bad nights before. I am 70 years old. I've had some rough nights. This one, the worst. Ha, good father, thou seest the heavens as troubled with man's act threatens his bloody stage. By the clock 'tis day, and yet dark night strangles the traveling lamp. It's night's predominance or the day's shame that darkness does the face of earth entomb when living light should kiss it. I love this, like, the traveling lamp. Dark night strangles the traveling lamp. So the sun is up, but everything is dark and spooky. 'Tis unnatural, even like the deed that's done. And this deed, of course, man's whatever is talking about. They all think that Duncan's sons planned the murder. Okay. So this patricide is such an unnatural thing. 'Tis unnatural, even like the deed that's done. On Tuesday last, a falcon, towering in her pride of place, was by a mousing owl hawked at and killed. And Duncan's horses, a thing most strange and certain, beauteous and swift, the minions of their race, turned wild in nature, broke their stalls, flung out, contending against obedience as they would make war with mankind. 'Tis said they eat each other.
Oh,
they
no.
did so, to the amazement of my eyes that looked upon it. So not only do we have crazy storms blowing wind around, not only is it pitch black in the middle of the day, not only did this tiny little barn owl eat a falcon, the horses escaped their pens and ate each other. So I just thought this would be an interesting. Someone had suggested this for, I'm going back to my Alexis Rose Does Shakespeare on TikTok, going back to my roots. And someone suggested part of this as a quote for that. And I was like, what a great idea for sketching Shakespeare.
Hell yeah.
How do you feel, my dearest Swan, about drawing horses?
So they are challenging.
I bet.
Horses are tough. Their anatomy makes no sense. It is a running joke. We actually, on the episode that the Horse Girls guested on for Doodle Crew, we did a whole talk about, like, they're so challenging. It's funny too, because there are many, I feel like, creatures that move with grace and are big and all of these things, but for some reason, like, horses specifically just elude us often as artists.
Yeah.
I grew up around horses. We had them my entire, like, childhood into adulthood. So I drew them a lot and liked drawing them. I am out of practice with them. So it's funny. A lot of it comes back as long as I have reference, I'm usually pretty good, but it is usually, aside from a movie that's specifically made as a horse movie, anytime there's an animated horse in anything, it just looks so wonky. Like, it
They
looks,
always look so, like, clonky,
yeah, they're
like,
just,
awkward.
oh, yeah. Which, to be fair, they are in real life. Like, they make no sense. They shouldn't survive, but yeah, it's so, what I'm trying to do is
Not draw the horses.
not draw the horses, not draw a whole pack of them, a herd. Um, but I'm also, something I love that we get to do is tackle these really spooky scenes, and as we've talked about, is a lot of it is the not showing. So I'm trying to think of ways of, like, you have that great moment of them bursting out, like, of the stables, and then how do you show essentially the descent into madness without just being really graphic, which, one, not my style anyways, but also
Right.
two, I'm like, I don't know how I would search for that on the internet as a
Yeah.
reference picture.
Right. So I just thought this was a really interesting scene to get to draw, to
Yeah.
hear from your perspective, because obviously we can't stage any of this, right?
Yeah.
We can set some dark and spooky lighting, we can do wind noises if we want to, but, like, this scene is just gonna be two old guys talking on a stump or whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you really evoke, and to be quite honest, what most people do is they just cut this. They just cut it from the script. They don't even deal with it. But how do you evoke those feelings with what you have? Hi, Vera.
She's being a menace this morning, but I love her. Hi. We've gotten to the point where I have to actually lock her out of the bathroom because she will not let me do my makeup in the morning.
Ah.
It's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, cat. Uh, yeah, so I was wondering, do you feel with a scene like this, just having two really good actors play off of each other and describe it, do you feel like keeping it in and doing that is worth it, or do you think it's easier to just cut the whole thing and not try and make that work?
It depends on your audience.
Stop sitting on my
Um,
keys.
at at the theater that I was, like, for our stuff, we did a lot with kids,
Mm.
which did not keep our Macbeth from being, like, really awful. Like, like, graphic in the way that live theater can be, but stuff like this is gonna go over their heads.
Mhm.
As, like, education theater, the poetry in this scene isn't worth the payoff of plot. There is no plot moving forward in
Yeah.
this scene. So that's something to keep in mind, cutting for time. Macbeth is a very short play, so you don't really need to cut as much, but it's still fat that you can trim.
Okay.
And I don't know if the payoff of, like, "Hey, the world knows that something bad happened,"
Mhm.
is enough. And it's the same thing in Caesar. There's a scene like this in Caesar where people are like, "Wow, there's, like, a sphinx in the road," or whatever. I don't actually, like, remember what happens in the Caesar one, but it's the same kind of, like, ill omen
Mhm.
night kinda thing. And that one is a little bit easier to keep in, because it gives Calpurnia a reason for saying, like, "See, I told you things are bad, Caesar, stay home, you big ding dong." And he's like, "You're a woman, shut up."
What do you know?
Yeah, exactly. And then she's like, "Okay, go, die about it." And he do. But yeah, it's, setting this kind of mystical tone, also depends on how you're dealing with the witches.
Mm.
Like, if you've got the witches involved in this scene somehow, which is something that I'm just kinda spitballing now and I've never really thought about before, you could make something of that for sure. Like, if they're kind of coordinating this, if you're looking at their magic as, like, really legit,
Ah.
you can make some cool effects out of it. But, yeah, I don't know, it just kind of is. It's poetry that doesn't move the plot forward much, and sometimes you just need to trim that.
Well, and I think what I have learned in a lot of this, and what you have specifically taught me as we've gone through Shakespeare, is there's a really cool element of people who have read the whole play, talked about it, understood it, then going in and when they move it to stage and choose their own performances of it, you can take all of the knowledge from all of these great scenes and use them as the set dressing, and you can tell the actors all of these feelings that they're feeling, and so you don't need it to be said because you can make that the world is unhappy because they know something is wrong, and you can tell the actors that. So like I love the aspect of it can be cut because you don't need it, but also you're still feeling the effects of it.
Right.
I just think
Right.
it's very, very cool.
Yeah, that's a great point too, is that because the second half of this scene, Macduff comes in and gives some pretty decent updates talking about Malcolm and Donald Bain are have escaped. Macbeth has already been crowned. And this is the important thing in this scene with Macduff is Ross asks, "Will you to Scone?" So are you going to go see Macbeth's coronation? And Macduff says, "No, cousin, I'll to Fife." So like you can see the seeds of Macduff's mistrust in Macbeth starting already. That's kind of the main character and plot point of this scene. And again, you don't super need it. You could just axe the whole scene, but depends on how much stage time you want to give Macduff to develop those seeds of doubt.
So it's funny because I will absolutely 100% put it to protest too much for this. I have some very specific feelings about Lady Macbeth and how everybody
Ooh.
should have listened to her and things would have gone a lot better. But I will admit that I don't know a lot about.
Yeah, why do you have those feelings, Swan?
Because that's what I have been consistently told for a number of episodes where the boys are being ding dongs, and if they would have just listened to her, and I feel the specific line is the play starts to fall apart when they stop communicating as husband and wife, and when they stop communicating with each other.
Yeah.
I got it. I got
I'm
the
like
pieces.
the proudest person right now in the whole world.
But it's funny because I don't know that much about Macduff or there is a Lady Macduff, right? Because we talked about
Not
these
for
in
long.
yeah, I was gonna say
Hey.
in they're named but not named because they don't have first names and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Oh gosh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Macduff is an interesting character because he's just like good guy TM.
Okay.
And he doesn't it's just like he's the first person to kind of not trust Macbeth. And then obviously when Macbeth kills his whole family, he really does not like that guy.
Yep.
But something that I think was interesting that I didn't know, and that Rob on this week's episode brought to the table is that Scotland's process for choosing a king was by appointment and not by birth. And so our whole argument was for Lady Macbeth preserving democracy by ensuring that it didn't just go to Duncan's son, which I thought was a really funny way of putting it. But at the end of the play, it does go to Malcolm anyway, because he has been named. And I think it's really interesting because you would think that in that tradition, it would light on Macduff after killing Macbeth and becoming the successor. But Macduff doesn't want to be king. So he has this whole scene with Malcolm that if you don't cut it, you're doing it wrong. It's like this 30-minute scene.
Jeez.
Where it's just so we have just seen Lady Macduff and her children be murdered. We have just had the most tragic scene in the entire play. And then we cut to these two buffoons sitting and talking for 30 minutes before Ross comes in and is like, "Hey, all your family's dead."
Oh my gosh.
Like, no. But the whole conversation is Macduff being like, "Hey, Malcolm, I really think you need to be king." And Malcolm's like, "I'm a bad person." And Macduff's like, "Okay, well, freaking fine then. Who else is going to do it?" And Malcolm's like, "Oh, I guess I'm not that bad," or whatever. Like, it's just a stupid scene. And so you can tell from that Macduff doesn't want it. So I just think it's an interesting point of his character that he really is fighting for like revenge and justice, quote unquote, rather than ambition.
That's
Which there's
interesting.
probably some deeper thoughts in there, but it's 9 a.m.
No, you're good.
I like that shadowing.
Yeah. Also, again, because it's early, I'm not looking up what would be the appropriate lantern type for this time period because I don't care. It's just going to be a miscellaneous lantern happening right now to cast the shadows that I need it to.
Also, that time can be whatever that lamp is.
Yep.
Like, that's I feel the least of anyone's issues in this series. We make things however we want.
Yes.
Oh, you know what I should do? I should make you draw more from Cymbeline, but I should make you draw in the vague, weird time period that we're setting the show.
I think that would be an excellent idea.
What are your thoughts on generic, timeless fantasy?
Love it. Big fan. Anything goes.
So I know we've talked about this before, but you have seen Gallivant, right?
Yes.
And
yes,
you have or have not seen Merlin.
I have not seen Merlin, but my family just started watching it, so I feel like I now need to. I know my sister was so cute. She's like, "Yeah, I kept hearing Steph talk about it, and it's always been what we've wanted to watch." So,
I actually put a couple episodes on the other night, so I was just like feeling some Merlin night. It's so good. You should definitely. I know you've got a long list of.
No, but I feel
TV.
like that's one where like it doesn't. My biggest thing right now is I just don't have the brain. I don't have the brain for anything heavy. And I was
You
like,
do not need a brain for this
yeah,
show.
that's what I was feeling. I was like, this might actually be really perfect.
Okay, I'm gonna do a full rewatch because I started like in season 3, and I was like, oh, I want to go back. I feel like I could. You know how there are some, there are some movies that you could just like describe shot for shot and word for word.
Yes.
I feel like that's Merlin for me.
Oh,
Like I could
fun.
take you episode by episode, and there are like not all of them, but there are probably like over half of the episodes of Merlin up until the end of season 3 because like I've only watched seasons 4 and 5 once.
Okay.
But like I could just like describe you shot for shot. They live the pictures of those moments live in my mind forever. So let's do yeah, next month we're going to do generic fantasy cuz that's I think such a fun look.
Yes.
And such a like interesting flexibility cuz it's not period at all. And that's it, just that like the lantern thing like kind of reminded me of that, like that you get to do whatever you want. You get to have dresses with no sleeves, even though it would not have, technically been appropriate.
Yep.
Because
It's
we're in generic fantasy.
Exactly. No, and I think that's fun because the amazing like beauty of the history of clothes is all of these cool designs, and a lot of them didn't exist at the same time, which logically I get absolutely, but that's why like it gets to be fantasy where you're like, no, they have all existed, and in this world, one little thing ticked off so that they discovered this thing 100 years before they did in the real world. Like, it doesn't matter, you can have these two things together and it's okay. Like, I like that aspect of it because if I just wanted straight history, I would do straight history. Like,
Right.
I don't need it all the time.
Exactly. And like, I'm sorry, but do you think that, well, let me do this. Do you think that this dress would have been allowed in Medieval England?
She's a witch.
Like, ma'am. Ma'am.
No.
Look at how sexy this dress
Oh
is.
my gosh. That's amazing.
But where a dress like that would be really good? In 110-degree Austin in May.
Yes. Yes, it would. That'd be a great place for it.
Uh-huh. So that's why that's one of the reasons. And then the dress from Gallivant, that like also red strap sleeve dress that she wears.
Which I feel like Gallivant did it so well because it feels like a complete world. It gives you a very specific idea of a vague time period, but it didn't have to be anything more than that. Like, and it was fine, and you still were fine with it.
Yeah. And like I just think that's so cool how productions like that can thread the needle of everything.
Yeah.
And I this kind of goes to my love of anachronism anyway, or like taking something that's established and flipping it on its head. One of the whole conceits of Merlin is that it's Prince Arthur, that Arthur is growing up with King Uther as his dad, which like any version of the King Arthur story, like it's the sword and the stone. That's the only way he becomes king. He grows up like an orphan basically and discovers this. So having that idea of, hey, what would he be like if he were a prince? A piece of doo-doo, right? Like he's this privileged, antagonistic, like chauvinistic, not necessarily like the whole time, but he definitely starts out that way. And that's why Merlin is so important to guide him while also being a youth.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool.
I think that's very cool. And I love because then you get to see them make mistakes together and learn together. And it's much more relatable than just old guy, teacher, and king. Like, yeah.
And they also find ways to like conjure that image of old man Merlin. They also find ways to work in the sword and the stone. Like they find ways to bring in these elements of the myths that is really, really clever. And God, so many people are so butthurt about that show. Oh, it's not Prince Arthur, it's King Arthur. Like, ma'am.
Yeah.
Was it like who? People just, I think, hold on to stories a little too precious for me sometimes.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing because it feels like just by essentially writing fan fiction of this thing that you like, you have in any way said that the original doesn't exist, isn't the fact. Like it's just a fun universe. I just want to play in this universe.
Let me play in your world with your characters.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is what public domain is good for. Like we were talking about, we're going to get a whole bunch of gay Sherlock now, and I am so ready for it. But
so ready.
Before January 1st of this year, you could not do that. Make your own characters. Make your own Benoit Blanc. Who is, because I imagine you still haven't seen Knives Out or Glass Onion?
I have not. You're correct.
Well, Daniel Craig is a Southern detective who is gay, and he's like that Poirot or Sherlock type of character, but very good. Very, very, very good.
I adore him. I am honestly, I think he was great as Bond. I didn't love those movies necessarily, but I thought he did a great job. But getting to see him actually
have fun,
play, because like, so my first introduction to him was in the Tomb Raider movie, where he's kind of a bit part. Like he's the love interest. He's this like the not as good other archaeologist who Lara Croft just keeps beating, but also flirting with. And I'm like, I love all of this, but he's fun and he's got sense of humor, but he's noble when he needs to be. Like, that's how I got introduced to him. And I was like, for the way that they wrote his Bond movies, they stripped away a lot of that fun. And while he still makes jokes, like he just has a lot of tragedy. Like, it's
Yeah,
just a
I've only
bummer for
seen, like,
him.
the one, I think. I don't know if I've seen any others of his.
I went back and rewatched them because I was frustrated. I remember going to see Quantum of Solace in the theater and leaving and being like, I have no idea what I just watched for the last 2 hours. Like,
Oh,
tons of
no.
explosions, very cool. Like, sure, I got my action, but I don't understand any of the story. And I was reading something, I was talking about, it was timing out the beats of like a Michael Bay movie. And it was saying, eh, for however you feel about what he did to the Transformers franchise, not addressing that,
I don't
but
feel anything.
yeah. To anybody who watches this later,
Yeah.
there, hi again, he doesn't give you enough time in between big action sequences. So you'll have like a 20-minute action sequence and then you'll only have like a 5-minute downtime before something else big happens. And it's this whole conversation about how it doesn't let the plot breathe at all. And those big impactful fights that should have had more punch, pun intended, don't,
Yeah.
because there hasn't been any time to build up. And the new Bonds did that to me too. I was like, no, I love to see this action, but I need time. So much of what was cool and boring as a kid and cool now of Bond
Mhm.
was the character moments, was the interaction and the spy stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was hard for me. I was like, I just don't feel anything because you didn't give me time to feel anything.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. That's pacing is wild, like, how much it can affect a movie, and this is, I won't do any spoilers, just structural spoilers because I don't think you'll watch it anyway, but anyone who's watching who, has not seen the menu yet, um,
yeah, I
that
don't
was what
know.
I kind of tossed to Tony about, was the pacing of it. I think it was his, because he was saying, like, he liked it, but there was something missing for him.
Yeah.
And my guess on that, is that it followed a Shakespearean plot structure.
Yeah, you had said that, which again, it's one of those where it tempts me so much where I'm just like, maybe
Oh,
if
yeah,
I
I
just,
did put it in the main discourse,
yeah.
didn't I? That's right.
But I was like, oh, that's neat because goes back to, I had a friend who recommends me horror movies he thinks I'll be able to handle. And one of the ones we watched was Crimson Peak. And I loved it because, one, like, it was legit scary at times. The ghosts were scary. But he apologized to me because he's like, yeah, it takes a little bit to get going and it can feel kind of slow. But the funniest part of that is it's a period piece. It is a, like, I was like, no, no. Honestly, before the scary stuff started happening, it was a movie I would have watched
Yeah.
anyways on my own. I was like, that part didn't feel slow to me at all. Like, this is how courtship and building of all of this works in all of these period pieces. So that part made absolute sense to me. But again, if you don't watch a lot of period romance,
Yeah.
you don't know how that feels.
Right, you don't have that, like, established, um, I don't know, like, temper for
Yeah.
that pacing, and so, yeah, Tony hit me up on the side afterwards, which is why I forgot to put it in the main Discord, and was like, "I think you're right, because I wanted something big to happen at the end, and that's what felt like it was missing." Like, I wanted something else to, like, happen,
Mhm.
and it didn't. And that doesn't mean it's not exciting all the way through, but I think that, and this kind of ties into, what I was talking about a while ago on TikTok about directing Shakespeare not being interchangeable skills. And I think we talked about this last month a little bit. And I think that maybe that's why, because in traditional plays, the climax happens in act 3 of 3.
Mhm.
Um or in the 80% of the play is
Yeah.
done, and you have to be so much more skilled in a traditional play at building tension. You have to be able to keep the audience's attention and excitement all the way through, so you have to layer that tension for so much longer than you do in a Shakespeare play. But in a Shakespeare play, you have to be able to hold attention after the climax has happened.
Yeah.
So, like, it's no one better than the other. It's just totally different skills. Like, in a Shakespeare play, I only have 2.5 acts to build all of my character development, to get the audience, trusting these characters and attached to them.
Rooting for somebody, worried about the consequences of somebody's actions. Yeah.
Yeah. You only have a short amount of time. And then you have to keep making them care, which is why Julius Caesar is such a hard one, because directors spend too much time focusing on Caesar and Antony, and they don't spend enough time focusing, or I guess they spend too much time focusing on the plot of killing Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
That's their focus. They don't spend enough time developing the relationship between Brutus and Cassius, which is the only thing that lasts. If you don't have that strongly built, the second half of your play is going to be dog poop boring, because it's all about Brutus and Cassius trying to figure out what to do now that they're in war about the fact that they killed Caesar.
Yeah.
So
that makes so much sense.
Killing Caesar is not the point of that play.
Which anytime they say kill Caesar, all I can think of is the scene
totally
from Mean
stab
Girls.
Caesar.
We should totally just kill Caesar every time.
Yep. Natural.
So good. But yeah, no, that makes so much sense. And like, seeing characters deal with ramifications isn't always something that we get. So like, that you should feel that. You should feel their stress and their, oh shit.
Right. And Antony, you want to talk about a couple of the best speeches in all of Shakespeare. Antony has 3 words exchange with Caesar ever in this play.
Really?
It's the top of the play, and they're coming out for the race or the feast or whatever, and Caesar's like, hey, get too drunk last night, Antony? And he's like, hey, gonna do a good race for you, Caesar, or whatever. I don't actually, whatever that is, whatever that exchange is. But if you don't build subtext into that and build up their absolute bond, then Antony has not earned his pardon me thou bleeding piece of earth speech. That cry havoc, let slip the dogs of war, all of that emotion, pardon me that I was meek and gentle with these butchers, that whole speech is one of the most underrated speeches in Shakespeare, and he does not earn it if you don't do more than what's on the page. Hi, Elliot. Welcome to my yelling about Shakespeare. But yeah, and that's why doing stuff like this, doing exercises like drawing these scenes is so cool, to unlock so much of the relationships outside of the text.
No, that's very cool. I'm sorry. You're blowing my mind with Julius Caesar right now, because it makes so much sense.
Yeah. It's been on my mind because thinking about the menu and thinking about the plot structure.
Thank you.
Isn't she great?
I was putting it off, but it's 38 minutes in and I have to draw the horses.
We had to get to the horses.
But I like this. There's something about this because it's scene setting, because it's recalling these moments. I feel like you almost feel like these two characters are just observing this kind of panelless collage that's happening.
It looks like, I've never seen the movie Pagemaster, but it looks like what I imagine the movie Pagemaster would be like. They open this book and all of these things come out of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. I like that.
I know there's no book. I know it's an owl's wings, but it kind of has that. It's what?
I've never seen it either, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just using my imagination here. I think it looks like the Pagemaster poster might be. Let's see.
When I think
not at all.
What was the oh gosh. I was made to watch some of it and now I cannot remember it at all. It was Sam Neill when he's really young. What is that? Oh, thank you for the follow, Elliot. Thank you. I think it's Sam Neill. I thought it was him. It was somebody that I was surprised about is playing I think it's a King Arthur. Very, very, very
Merlin's apprentice?
Maybe. Is that Sam Neill?
Yeah.
Okay. I think
Sam
I
Neill
watched.
did a movie called Merlin's Apprentice.
Yeah. So like it's got that same sort of vaguely fantasy time period thing.
Oh, I guess he did. Sam Neill did a Merlin show.
Okay. This is where like the Sunday morning brain, I'm like, there are
Yeah.
vague hints of this in the mists of my memory.
Yeah. But it does have that very fantasy spilling out of the like,
Yeah.
and with how poetic the scene is, like just that the poetic nature of these lines, it lends itself to that really nicely.
Yeah. Well, and I'm excited about it, and it's something, again, this would take a lot of looking up reference because I just don't have it in my brain, but there is this terrifying is genuinely the word for it. There's a terrifying like frantic nature to horses when they stampede and when they're scared.
Yeah.
And like depending on the size of the horse, like I have so many thoughts on horses, but so like if they burst out of a barn, like you always see it in any movie where the barn catches fire and they're trying to get the
Mm.
horses out, like there's just this panic in them that's very scary. But something that I've always loved is when you would hear things talked about with like war horses and like the thundering of hooves, a lot of people pictured like the race horses, which are very sleek. They have very thin legs. They're meant for speed. But the war horses were like the workhorses. Like they were heavy. They were tough.
Ugh.
They were these like thick, chonky boys. And so, you know, even just a few of them, you can feel the earth shake when they're galloping around you. Like, so to
Sure.
have thousands of them coming at you, you're like, no, this is why cavalry was scary, because the earth is shaking and there's just this like drone of galloping happening, and it's just giving myself chills. It's so good.
Yeah.
So I want that, like I want to keep that franticness, that fear and energy that they have in that. So
Yeah. Well, and like what I really like about what you've got on the page is that they look quite skeletal while
mm.
also looking strong.
Oh,
Like,
good.
and I think that's something interesting about horses is that you can see their muscles.
Oh
You
yeah.
know where their muscles are, and you know they can kill you. Um, but these ones they've got like a nightmare quality to them.
I like that.
Like they look, they're obviously horses and they're obviously strong, but there's something about them that to me looks, and I don't know if it's the pose or it's like the way their heads are turned, but there's something about them that looks scary. Like it's really cool.
Yay.
Really, really cool. Like you've captured the nightmare of them while also drawing beautiful horses. Like that's I figure since Anthony made you draw the Vitruvian Man last night, like we might as well up the ante.
3 times, Anthony.
Yeah, you know, just a bunch of Vitruvian men hanging out.
It was so perfect. And like he's starting it, I'm like, okay, all right, that gives me like something to go off of. And then as he's describing more, I'm like, Anthony, you maniac, you absolute maniac.
Yep.
It's so good.
Yeah. Ooh, let me guess what this is gonna be. Oh, it's a horse.
Yeah. So this is. I want to. Hey, no,
Good guess. Good guess, Steph.
Excellent guess. I'm using the just descend into like darkness with like silhouettes type stuff for the actual carnage. Just because that feels not super gross.
Coffee delivery.
Aw. Was he still in his jammies?
Yes, he's in his Christmas jammies.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I love it so much.
Me too.
Hi, cat.
There's something so snuggly about seeing people in jammies.
Oh, yes. Hi. I'm going to put you in jammies soon and lock you out of here.
I don't know how she'll feel about that. There's a lot of animals in Macbeth. I was thinking about cats and how many cats there are in Shakespeare. There's not many, but like
I was
one of
gonna
the
say,
witches
he's
has a
surprised.
familiar cat.
Okay, that would make sense.
And like I think there's just like a lot of animal imagery in Macbeth in general. There's a lot of bird imagery and symboline. There's a lot of eagle stuff happening in this play.
Interesting.
Yeah, and not even just because Jupiter descends on his golden eagle throwing thunderbolts.
Hi.
But like there's all this when Imogen marries Posthumous, she's like, I chose an eagle and did avoid a puttock. When Cloten says something, he says something about an eagle. Still a lot of like eagle stuff happening. Oh god, I just had a thought. Eagle symbol. Oh, you know who I am going to reach out to see if he's available to play Jupiter? Because I've wanted to get like an Austin celebrity.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Pokedex Expert episode with Luigi Primo?
Yes. Oh my god.
He's like big time wrestling in Japan now. Like,
yeah,
he's, like,
I follow him on Twitter, and I was like, look at you doing all of this stuff. Yeah.
But can you imagine?
That would be amazing.
I am a Jupiter. I am domestic god.
Oh my god, I die.
Come out, twirl a pizza, and leave. My audience would be like, what the actual heck am I watching? Like, we've had this like generic fantasy, beautiful story so far. Posthumous is crying in jail, and then Luigi Primo comes out. I'm the best wrestler. I'm making the best pizza. I am a Jupiter.
Oh my god, I need it. I need it so much. Oh my god.
Good morning, Groove is for life.
Good morning.
I just think it would be so funny.
I think that would be amazing.
So yeah, that's my new reach goal. Throwing a pizza.
I'm the best. I'm the best god.
I'm the best god.
Oh, so good. It's so
it just makes me laugh so hard. So
I love it.
Yep. Austin celebrity Luigi Primo. I mean, he's in Italy. Well, he's not. He's in a British jail, but he's been in Italy. There are Italians. All the other ghosts are Italians. So yeah, makes sense.
Also, if someone's coming to this show to fact check, then just stop.
If someone's coming to the show and doesn't appreciate Luigi Primo as Jupiter, like, I don't want them watching my Shakespeare shows. I don't need you in my free audience.
I am not making Shakespeare for you. This is
not for you. This is for me. Me alone. Oh god, it's so funny to me.
That's amazing.
Yep. And it just, oh gosh.
That's a cat.
It's getting me through this casting process for sure.
Good.
Yep. That like glimmer of hope.
I feel like too, man. I don't know how you'd be able to do it. Like, if he couldn't be there in person but could just record something, like just have like a screen pop up at the back when Jupiter's there, and it's just a hit, like a terrible like After Effects cloud of smoke, and like, it's Emmy. Like, it'd be so good.
Thanks, Jupiter.
Which has now become one of my favorite lines. Thanks, Jupiter.
Thanks, Jupiter.
Oh god.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's something. This is what's keeping me going. January has like flown, so I don't know how.
It really has.
We're here, but I don't know how we got here.
I don't.
All right, back on Macbeth track. That was a nice little journey away.
Well, I need it too. Like, I think that's the when you're drawing something really serious, like I think we've talked about this. When I am doing my first layout of a page, I will often not listen to like music or anything because that
Mhm.
can really affect it. So, getting the
Hmm.
feel of it and getting that all set. Once I'm just going in and like cleaning up my lines, I can listen to whatever, or I can listen to an audiobook or podcast or something like that. But there's a very much like, if you're getting a really heavy scene or a really sad scene, like sometimes I'm like, I just need to laugh a little bit because I'm
Yeah.
getting really pulled into this sadness and I would like that to stop for a sec.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. You don't listen to anything while you're doing layout?
Uh if I so when I will say I get a script and I have descriptions and I'm making thumbnails. So I'd count that as like my first thing is I'll read the page, I'll make sketches maybe along the way as I'm reading it, read the full thing, think about it, go back and do that. But if it's just a if it's just a dialogue scene between two characters, not as important then. But if it's a very tense scene, if it's a very sad scene, if it's very like emotional scene, I want to make sure I keep that. And especially if it's a scene that has a lot of energy and is moving fast, I don't want to be
Mm.
listening to like something that's just calm in the background because in my
Right.
brain it makes me think calm. So I want, I
Right.
want the frantic, I want to keep that.
That's so
Um
interesting.
yeah.
That's really, really interesting. What a cool, because I never would have thought about how it can influence pacing. Because if you're listening to, or if you're drawing something that is like steady pace, and you're listening to this like,
Yeah.
like
Listen
you're
to my
just your
speed
panels are
metal.
gonna be smaller, and
Yeah.
they're gonna like
Yeah.
feel more frantic.
Yep.
That's so cool. That's really, really interesting.
And it's funny, like I like it because it's also there'll be times where and I because I set my own schedule a lot of the time, I don't have to work on pages in any certain order. So if
Mhm.
there is one that I know is like, okay, this one's going to need this type of feeling, I was like, I'm just not feeling that today. Like I can move around and work on different pages as the mood fits that. Like, okay, nope, this one is just meticulous. I need to make sure that this amount of dialogue fits on this page and all of these things. So it's a very, no, I just need to plan. I need to sit and
Yeah.
plan and figure out all that. Where other ones are like, okay, I need I need the energy in my drawings to represent the energy in the script. Uh yeah, so it'll be like really being conscious of that. And I'm sure, cat uh I'm sure people who produce more work or work faster than I do, aren't as affected by it, but
Yeah,
it
but
wouldn't surprise me if people were just like, "No, I'm conscious of my external stimulus." It's why when I'm just doing inking or coloring, which is not mindless, but it is a different part of my brain, I can have TV shows or movies on in the background, and
so
that's
that was
fine.
actually gonna be my next question was, do you, because I know you listen to a lot of podcasts and you listen to music. So is it just a like you can't watch, so you couldn't have a show on in the background while you're drawing because like the visual stimulation would kind of counteract your brain, or like what's the
Uh, so most of the time, if it's a movie or TV show, it's something I've already watched, so I know what the
right?
visuals
Because
are doing.
you have to
Yeah,
look at your page to
yeah,
draw it, so you can't like actually be paying attention. Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Um,
definitely.
but also, at least for me, I am. Are you serious right now with what you're doing? Get out of, ma'am, ma'am. Hold on. Yeah, go get. She found one of the like not elastic, but Velcro cord holders, and she was
Mm,
picking at that. But it's the one that's attached to my drawing tablet.
mm,
Little.
mhm.
Um.
Watching TV.
Yes. So I also want to make sure that the ideas that I'm bringing to my page or stuff like that, while they are going to be influenced by other things that I have watched or seen, I'm not actively being influenced by, what I'm looking at in that moment. Also, and this I think is just how my brain personally works. There have been times where during certain things, if I'm really concentrating on the page I'm working on, I won't necessarily be hearing whatever is playing or
Hmm.
so there I was will never forget this specific thing. I was in college and I was working on animation homework and some sort, and I was trying to listen to the Harry Potter audiobooks, which is a book I've already read. I hadn't listened to the audio, but I'd already read it. And there'd be times where all of a sudden I'd kind of like come out of my haze and be like,
Yeah.
wait,
What's
what?
happening?
Where are we now? And I would have missed, 10, 15 minutes of it because I'd just been so focused. So I don't have the space in my brain to take in like other stimulus, which is why I listen to a lot of just like very repetitive, like techno stuff, because it's just enough to have music playing so that there's not just silence, but it
Yeah.
doesn't require anything of me.
Yeah.
And I can
I
get
did that
lost.
with video game music when I was grading. When I
Yes.
had to grade like 100 essays, I
Yep.
would put on video because it made me feel like I was like winning some sort of battle. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. And it's funny to me because for certain things, it doesn't matter to me at all. But for other stuff, like when I'm really trying to develop a page, I think it's nope, I need all the processing power, all the bandwidth going to this one specific thing.
yeah. Yeah.
But,
Hey, Lost Limey.
hello. Hi.
I don't know who Erasure is. Erasure's greatest hits. Do you know them?
Mm-mm.
Well,
At
what
least
kind of
not.
music is it? Maybe it's good for drawing.
Yay!
Maybe it's good for grading essays. Oh, I don't have to do that anymore.
Ah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, so it's funny. So I don't know if for any of your degrees, if you were ever required to have access to programs that would have been very expensive had you had to purchase them but didn't. But there
No.
used to be things that you could download. Pet Shop Boys.
Oh,
That's
fun.
The
Fun.
care. Amazing. Little things that were key gens that would generate a key code to let you access the program. And they would just have this little, very similar to video game music, just MIDI music that would just play on them. So I would keep one of those just open and it would just loop and loop and loop for hours because that was what made my brain feel good.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Yeah.
You know what? I haven't thought about MIDI music in a long time. We used to do a lot of like when we were doing like cabaret style things, sometimes the only thing that you could find was like a MIDI version of the song. So I just have this like this memory of like someone singing Out Tonight from Rent and it being like boop 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 boop.
Oh my god, I love that so much.
Oh, with that like real distinct MIDI tone.
Yep.
Oh man. Yeah. College was something.
It was something.
But yeah, no, all of my programs were I guess when you talk about programs, like I had access to the British Library. That's not the same, but yeah, I knew Groove is for Life would love the MIDI
all
MIDI
those
memories.
Beeps and boops. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, no software because nothing that I did. They were like you read it with your eyes. Those I have to pay for enough. I've you know what's funny when you think of like financial security and like different jobs that you've had. I for the first time like I don't know 2 weeks ago, I was like I can change out my contacts and it's only been like 3 weeks that I've had them in. This is luxury.
Dang.
This is luxury. Like normally and like even it won't change my habits because I've been doing this for 25 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, I don't have to like hoard my contacts and like keep them in my eyes for 3 months when they're 2-week changeable. It was the greatest moment. I was like, this is where it's at. Woo! Keeping my eyes healthy.
Yeah. That was me and going to the dentist where they're like, we've not seen you in a long time. And I'm like, yeah,
Sure haven't.
We're not going to talk about it. They're like, do you want to do x-rays? I'm like, not really, but I'm assuming we probably should.
Yep.
I was like, and part of my thing is, again, like so many of my things motivated by spite is I didn't go through 4 years of braces to like not take care of my teeth, but at the
Yeah.
same time I'm like, dentistry is really expensive.
Yeah.
But
Yes, it is.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, being an adult is hard. But at least we're not horses eating each other.
Yeah. Look at that.
Look at that scared horse. That horse is not having a good time. I love him. I love him so much.
No, I'm really happy. Apparently the horse part of my brain was working this morning, which I'm very excited about.
But like also it's really cool. Can you zoom into the like the group of horses where you've got like the shadows behind them?
Yeah.
It's so cool. And it like kind of adds to that like really spooky. Maybe it's because this horse in the front, you've got those like lines on its the front of the group. You've got like the lines on its rib cage. Maybe that's why it makes me think of like a skeleton.
Yeah. Which it's funny because it started as just like my working lines to figure out, but it gives it, like you said, it gives it a very ethereal, like skeleton, ghostly feel. And I was like, I think I'm just gonna keep it.
Yeah, no, it looks really, really cool. And I also love, I don't want to keep making you scroll, but
No, you're
like
good.
up to the top, the depth that these two guys have. Like, I don't know how you've done it, but there is so much. Like, it looks 3D to me. And I know that's like the point. Like, it's supposed to look like
it's
full and
still good to
round.
hear.
But
That
like,
means I succeeded.
it's so wild to me how much depth there is. The side like the side of his face, but then like the highlight on his hair and the way that like I can tell his hair does this, like it's going like out from his head, but it's like a drawing.
Yay! No, it's awesome. It's an incredibly like great compliment. So thank
That's
you.
so cool.
Well, and it's so there's an interesting thing with the, a teacher said it to me once and now it lives in my brain forever. In college, because I was in school for animation, the whole point was that I was able to show depth and movement in a 2D space.
Yep.
And so a big thing that one of our very, very, very tough professors talked to us about was that if you couldn't showcase it with just lines, if you needed color or shading to make it look three-dimensional, make it look like it was supposed to be, then it's not a good drawing. Like many things, it's an oversimplification of a very complicated thing, but it has its roots in a really important thing. It's why if you ever look at a how to draw book, especially for like Disney movies, they talk about the silhouette. You should be able to have a character completely in silhouette and tell something about their personality. Now, every drawing of every scene, not going to be that way. But, and I always think of like Jasmine. If you put Jasmine in silhouette, you can tell even with her hair, like this is also why breaking apart shapes. So she's got a lot of hair that hangs close to her. She's got very billowy pants. You've got all of these different shapes that if they were to overlap would make the image very hard to read. But if you put her in her kind of like twirling, so her hair's moving just away from her, like sassy pose, you get an idea of what the character is like and you're able to see all of the elements. So between that and then thinking about like, okay, how do you make her look like she is three-dimensional even though you're only ever working on a 2D space? Here's two ways that you can trick the audience into making it believe it has more depth than it actually does on the paper. Yeah, there's a very cool like psychology of tricking the mind and the eye to see all of that stuff, but also it's one of those where I work really, really hard to think about that and be like, no, if I have to use shading to have that be the only redeeming thing that saves this piece, then I've done something wrong in how I've decided to construct the initial images. So
that's really cool.
Yeah,
that's really fascinating.
Now, as an adult in my 30s, I think it's really cool. As a 18-year-old in college, I was just like, I don't know how to do this. I'm just trying to pass. Yeah.
That's so fascinating. I'm trying to, so this is going to be the first time I've directed in like since before we have been doing sketching Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And it's not even real directing because it's just coordinating and then throwing it all on stage together. But I feel like I've gotten so much inspiration for how to help craft characters from these chats that we've had.
Yay.
Because like as you're saying that, as you're talking about silhouette and like having it portray something about the characters, like obviously body positioning and movement, like there are so many theater exercises that you walk around the room and then like you use status to whatever. But like I'm thinking of like a single pose or like a single like image, like a silhouette image of these characters and how those could be useful for like I don't even know. Like I don't it's just like
Yeah.
my brain is flying right now on how that could be kind of a theater or director exercise in order to get because we don't have the luxury of time to develop characters.
Right.
We don't have that at all. So we need something that is like that the audience doesn't know who these characters are. The actors probably don't even know who these characters are still at this point when we're doing the show. So how do we have clear images of what to expect or what to read into
Yeah.
let's keep talking about this
I
because
would
like
absolutely
and I
love
don't
that.
even mean right now but like let's over the next
Yeah.
couple months like let's keep coming back to this because I think there's something in it. There's something there for theater as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's been such a cool thing for me in all of this as we've talked that there are probably should be surprising, but there are so many similarities between how I think about staging on the page versus how you think about staging
Yeah.
in a play. Like it's one of those like, oh duh, this makes so much sense, but sometimes you just need someone to say it to you in the right
Yep.
arrangement of words to be like, oh, I understand.
Yeah. Swan, I think this is one of my favorite pieces you've done.
Yeah.
Like, I
I'm really happy with it. Like, which is not
so
something I always feel.
freaking cool.
Yeah.
I can't get over it. Is that can you zoom into right below the people?
Yep.
Just talking to my microphone. What is happening here?
So this is me attempting to draw vaguely a castle
Castle? Okay.
with you know when the clouds are really thick but you can still see the sun coming through them?
Yeah.
That's my trying to show cuz
Okay.
I wanted like moonlight I would draw a little bit different in how it reflects the clouds, but this is kind of just like you can clearly see the sun but it's just hazy. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Okay.
my and then I was hoping I think this is the one part where I would want to look up some more reference and work into it, but having hillside here so that
Mhm.
you could just see a lot of that and then that works into like the very rough thatching of the roof of where the horses are escaping from. But
Okay.
that you just have this like
Yeah.
things
No,
are
I
just
love the
off.
looming. I thought it was a castle, but I'm blind and as we've established, couldn't see it clearly enough.
Yeah.
Um,
Also castles hard to draw.
yeah, but it's so cool to have that be the smallest thing and the like inciting act, right? Like that the shit that happened in there. That's why we're in this situation. So like for it to be in this background and kind of all of this chaos spilling from it. Oh, it's so cool, Swan. I've loved everything you've done,
Aw.
but I really think this might be my favorite so
Yeah,
far.
this one feels cool. This one is much more concept piece, I think,
Yeah.
than full like and I it's what I love about illustrated storytelling and why I think, comics are so much more than a lot of people understand it, but a lot of people are still new to it. Like this could be in a comic because you're
Yeah.
still sequentially telling a story through illustration. And so like that's the power of this. You also talk about how the viewer's eye moves through a piece. And we've talked about it a little bit.
Mhm.
As a reader in people who read in the West, so you read top to bottom, left to right.
Yep.
You're going to start in that top left-hand corner just out of programming and you're
Yep.
going to move towards the bottom. So being conscious of that, like I love this little like S shape that I get that
Yeah.
kind of then, snakes you towards the end of the page. And we've talked about, the goal is always to essentially get to the bottom of the page to make the person want to turn the page.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we work into new like digital mediums, it might just mean that they're scrolling, but that's where I would put a break to make them then want to scroll more to see what happens next. And
Yeah.
it's a fun, that's that fun puzzle part of it for me where I'm just like, okay, so I know these are the 3 elements that I want to have on this. How do I break them up? How do I make them all fit together and not overlap in confusing ways? And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple things that stand out to me about this today is that a lot of times where you are the most creative is in adaptation of time. Like
Hmm.
you take a piece and you're like you're putting it in a setting that is cool and interesting and adds to the telling of the story. We've talked a little bit about structure of panels, so like
Mhm.
playing with time that way. Like how it how you read through it like you just said. And this feels like you're really like you're playing with concept in a totally different way. And this to me, this page is exactly how much space this scene should take up in the play.
Yeah.
It should hit you in the face and then it's gone.
I it's something I love that. That is a huge compliment. So thank you so much. But I love that with comics, as we've talked, you can't always determine how long someone will stay on something.
Right.
So with this scene possibly being one that could be cut, it's
Mhm.
the no, you can take as much or as little as you want from this page. You could have this one page of being like, oh, 2 dudes are talking about what just happened. Oh, look, now the plot is progressing as I flip the next page, and you don't ever have to think about it again. But you can also be like, oh, there's this thing and there's this thing. And like as you look back into it more, you get rewarded with more details and more things. Like that's a very, very cool feeling.
And with the poetry of the text, you could spend an hour on that page.
Yeah.
Like as an academic or like reading through it, like picking apart all of those details. And so you have that flexibility in the text and also in this piece. It's very cool.
This is a fun one. Thanks for bringing this one. This is awesome.
Yeah. I just kind of had no idea. Like I said, a friend had popped it onto Twitter as a suggestion for my Alexis series. And I was like, that sounds like a perfect, just because I had no idea what you would do with it.
Yeah. Yay!
This is so good. Swan, you're
fun.
amazing.
Thank you. Also, again, I love the ones where it just works and just comes together. Like, that's so exciting. We're like, hey,
And you did this
okay.
fast.
I know. I surprised myself.
Like, this is a whole page, like, in like a flat hour.
Yeah. Just starting
You're amazing.
my prep, my training for Dragon Con.
Yeah.
Gotta get the whole page done in an hour.
Oh gosh, I gotta start thinking about what we're gonna do for Dragon Con.
Yeah.
We need more what did we did? Oh yeah, chickens.
Chickens. Speaking of Julius
of,
Caesar, when you think Julius Caesar, you think
that's right. Cheating chickens. Yeah, I gotta think about something that's got interaction. Because I think that's been a really fun piece of it.
Yeah. No, this is awesome.
Start my engines, my brains, all my brains.
My
Hey, thank
brains.
you everyone for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Vineyard Warrior. Thank you, Groovus for Life. The Chicken Caesar Chronicle. Yep.
Yeah.
Love it.
Amazing.
No, this was so much fun.
This is the best. Thank you all for being here. You can find me at P2M Pod. You can find Swan at a Swan named Emily. And you can find us at DragonCon.
Yeah!
8 months from now.
Yep.
Okay, goodbye.